Okay, 6 thumbs up already. Sorry, I'm a minute late or so. Click here. Okay. Well, I've just had an updated version of the software I use for live streaming, so it's, I don't know, as usual, IT people have to justify their existence, so they try and fix things that are not broken. Oh, you probably couldn't hear me very well. Hopefully that's better. I forgot to put the microphone in front of me. Please let me know if your sound is okay. Hopefully it is. Oh, down to 1, so maybe you can't hear me. I don't know. Oh wait, I hadn't plugged this in. There. Right, now better. Oh, there's 3 of you back. Well, hopefully the rural internet thing is solved because I fixed a 4G internet. Ah, good. Thank you, Sam. There we go. As you can see, I've got a few layers on because I'm a bit chilly. Today is actually really sunny, but quite cold nevertheless. And on the stream, I was just going to do a little bit of a random one, but I know that the recent blog posts I've done of like, hello, Slanty Chauffeur Bear. I've done like a 4-part series on like how to change the things in Global Homo World. And, I've been getting a few emails and so on from people discussing, hello, Chad. So I just thought if you guys wanted to, throw some questions or like comment on it or whatever, like go for it. And then a bit more after that 4-part series on how to win against, the current demonic charge that we seem to have been under for the last few years. I wrote about Russia and what I think is going to happen in 2023, more or less. Funnily enough, I saw part of a stream that Vox did with Piero San Giorgio, whose book I've got over there. And sounds like a very interesting guy. I haven't met him yet, but I think I might sometime this year. And more recently, I did like what I thought would be a pretty obvious post in terms of the 20 most important things in life, sort of thing. But again, that's receiving a bit of attention. Most of the comments on my blogs are limited, I think, partly because I've been brutal from the start for years since I've had the blog. When I've put the rules of commenting on my blog on the blog. There's a post somewhere where I said just a quick note to commenters, and I explained what my reasoning is. But basically, if you go on my blog and then you leave a comment that's just totally retarded, doesn't address the issues that are discussed, puts up straw man, tries to be a sophist or a liar, then you just get banned. No warning, nothing, and I just put you to spam, and I never see anything you will ever write ever again. And I've been doing that for years. So the people that have cottoned on to that are quite careful about commenting, rightly so, which is not, it's not about being in an echo chamber. It's about like, if you're going to talk to me on my blog, you're going to talk to me at my level, and you're going to be intellectually honest. Otherwise, I have zero interest in wasting my time reading your comment. There's actually a very recent comment that I've had, quite a long one, on the whole Russian 2023 situation, which disagrees with me quite vehemently, I think. The comment's up, and I've responded to it. It's not about agreeing with me. It's about being intellectually relevant and honest. So, okay, and without further ado, I guess if you guys have any if you have read the blog or whatever, or I should put where the blog is here in the chat just in case. So that's and I always forget to, that's the blog link. I always forget to put like the little read more button thing. So my blogs are just this long screen. You have to scroll down a lot to go to the next one if I've written a long one, which they tend to be. Oh, and then of course I did a little blog post on pedophilia and the main world religions, which I thought was quite interesting. But you know, I've sort of more recently possibly been turning my mind to pardon me, sort of long-term prospects of what's going on around the planet. Because it's all where, you know, since the 80s, there have been guys in the States going like, I've got my go bag, you know, for when the apocalypse happens, and like when World War III breaks out, I'll be fine. And certain situations have been going on for 3 years now that have changed everything. And, you know, if you have children like I do, you find yourself thinking, well, what's life going to be like for my kid when he's like in his 20s, in his 30s? You know, I've traveled all over the world. There's like cheap air flights. But the way things are going, they're going to try and limit everything, including your ability to eat eggs. Because apparently Bill Gates wants you to eat eggs that are made from plants. And there's now meat that's made from plastic. That's what they're trying to create next. And apparently egg yolk helps you fight off all the COVID stuff. And there have been reports in the States of, I think one of them is called Tractor Supply, and another one is called Purina or something like that, the feed that people give their chickens, and they've been feeding the chickens with this stuff. And the chickens don't lay any eggs. Not like that the production is down because it's winter. They like literally stop laying eggs. And then when you take the chickens off this feed and you just let them roam around and eat, you know, bits of grass, insects, and whatever, they produce eggs again. So it seems like there's a concerted effort to try and limit the food supply, curtail your ability to travel, make everything more expensive, difficult, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, where's that going? Because you're thinking, oh, well, the COVID's over. Really? I received a photograph, which I didn't set it up, so I won't be able to show you here, but it's a photograph of like a throat spray that you get in like pharmacy when you're starting to get a bit of a sore throat or a cold or something, and you get one of this stuff to spray in your mouth. And if you read in the ingredient it says mRNA/DNA technology is included in this thing. So they're now putting the mRNA non-vaccine serum stuff in normal medicines that you think, oh, well, you know, if you don't read the label, you're just going to go and like, oh yeah, there's a spray. And there you go. You got mRNA technology and God knows what else in you. They're trying to put it in the food supply. There's, you know, the CEO of Pfizer, whatever, that Bourla guy, that Jewish guy called Bourla, I forget his first name. He is on record already 2 years ago saying, oh, well, you know, imagine if we can put the stuff in like food and stuff like that. Imagine the level of compliance would be great. You know, yeah, that's like if you put Rohypnol in a drink, the level of compliance with girls for sex becomes really high. You know, it's that sort of mentality. So I don't know how long this video will stay up. And if it doesn't, I'll put it on BitChute. Atlantic Chauffeur Bear says, I had that problem. Any eggs laid or the chicken food are watery black inside. Ooh, that's even worse. So apparently, Slanty Chauffeur Bear, give us a bit more details also, because I think your English structure here is a bit weird. But he says he had a problem with the eggs and that they were either watery or black inside. Terrible. Elia, hello, sir. Hail Kurgan, greetings from Hyperborea. Hello, Elia. if there's another thing that I've sort of mentioned in the blog in passing, I think. There are a number of couples now that I have emailed me, like followed, read my books, whatever, and have now got engaged to be married, or got baptized and are becoming engaged to be married, and so on. More than one or two, and it is quite. And they're becoming sedevacantists. They're starting to attend sedevacantist churches and so on. So it's a really heartening process of the whole actual Catholicism coming back. And I think that's a key element, in the re-civilizing of the planet. I said this years ago when I was still in London. I think it was 2014, maybe something like that, on one of Vox's streams. I remember that I typed a comment that he noted, and it was like, oh, that's interesting, because the guy who made this comment is actually not a Christian, because I wasn't anywhere near being a Christian yet. And I said, look, we're talking in 2014 about the collapse of civilization is coming, because, well, maths, and Vox is an economist by training, and he looks at stuff like that, like, well, the Ponzi scheme that is the US dollar has to eventually blow up, and it will. And they've kicked that can down the road in 2008. They've kicked that can down the road in the whole COVID thing. They just keep quantitative easing, which means they just print bills out of thin air. But the thing is, it is a Ponzi scheme. It is a debt-controlled current. Money, as we understand it today, is a debt-based. It doesn't have to be, but that's how you control the world. So that's what it is. And if you look into the causes of World War I, World War II, the creation of the Fed, and so on, it's all connected. They're all, linked, these things. And the point is, in 2014, we were talking about the collapse of civilization and what we need to do to be prepared for that and rebuild when we can. And I said at the time, well, two things that are going to be critical are Christianity and city-states. And Vox was surprised because he knew I wasn't Christian by any means. And now I'm even more convinced not only that Christianity is going to be pivotal in the rebuilding of civilization, but specifically Catholicism. Because, as you guys know, as a Catholic, I believe, and I believe I'm also correct in this, that only Catholics are actually Christians, and only sedevacantists now are actually Catholic, because the Catholic Church is just as church-based as any Protestant weird denomination. And you have to go back to the original, rules or dogma and so on of the Catholic Church, and that's why I keep going on about the Code of Canon Law, which is sitting over there. I think that's the one. Let's see, we're starting from the red side. Yeah, you can just about. No, sorry, it's over the other shoulder. It's over here, behind me, so you can't see it. But the Code of Canon Law 1917 has got all the rules of the Catholic Church in one book. $50, $60, $35 if you buy the online, if you buy the access to the online version online. And it's a pivotal book because it gives you all the rules. And the thing is, those rules have created the best system of civilization on the planet that everybody wants to have. They just, yeah, we want to have that. We just don't want to follow the rules to have that, which is completely retarded, of course. I mean, if you like a situation that came about as a result of a set of rules that allowed you to create that situation, but then you want to gain from the benefits of that, but, not actually follow the rules, well, guess what? That's not going to work. And that's what we've been doing for 70 years, since 1958, the papacy got taken over by Freemasons, and civilization as a whole has gone downhill. The Mass, which was in Latin and real and true, and it was all the same everywhere across the world. Oh no, we're going to say it in our own language, and they bastardized it. They made the Mass invalid and fake and so on. So, Catholicism is going to be pivotal, and city-states will be what we need to recreate, because given the overarching power, let's say, of the powers that be, of the satanic pedophiles that run things, the deep state, etc., etc., there isn't really a government on the planet today that isn't totally converged. I don't know, maybe some tiny island nation that doesn't really matter. But you know, if you're looking at the U.S. government, it's ridiculous. It's the largest banana republic on the planet at the moment, with you know, so-called um, elections that make Zimbabwe look free and fair and just. So, and it's like that all over Europe. It's like that everywhere. So what are you going to do? Well, the only thing you can do is create little communities, which start out with one family, like me, that then befriends other families, gets people that are converting to, that do convert because you talk to them and they start to see the truth of things and they read and they educate themselves. And then they're like, hey, this guy's actually got it right. Yeah, I want to be a Catholic too. I mean, in Italy, most people are completely aware of the ridiculous, tragic nonsense that Bergoglio is, and even, you know, Ratzinger before him. So although Italy is the birthplace of Catholicism to a certain extent, the reality is that most Italians have no respect for the fake popes at all, but they're not necessarily educated enough about Christianity and Catholicism as I wasn't. You know, when I grew up in Italy when I was little, and I hated Catholicism because I could see what was going on in it. But I didn't know the history. Nobody told me the history. You know, my grandparents didn't tell my parents, I guess. My parents couldn't be bothered about any of it. So, but when you learn the truth, that's the thing. You know, truth is a disinfectant. Once you know the truth, you can't deny it anymore. Once you learn how, you know, the three-card Monte trick works, you'll never be caught out by it again. So once you see the truth, and remember, you've been lied about everything. You've been lied about how the economy works. You've been lied about, you know, sex, how that works between male and female, and, you know, the 50 genders or whatever. You've been lied about everything. Do you really think that you've been told the truth about the Catholic Church and what it is and what it was? Do you really think that? I mean, you know, the law of averages and statistics would suggest that you've been lied to. So I suggest you investigate it. And if you do, and when you see the truth and you find out the truth, it's inevitable that you will become totally resilient to the lies that are all over the place. So what you do, you look for other people that are like you. Oh, well, what if you're like me and there are no other people like you anywhere where you go? Well, then you create them. You know, you spread the information, and that's happening now. Keep in mind, I've been here not quite yet 2 years. It'll be 2 years in a couple of weeks. And I've definitely spent the vast majority of that time just trying to fix up the place. And I'm still not finished. And yet, there are, you know, couples that are getting married, becoming sedevacantists and so on, that want to eventually, or quite soon, or whatever, move here and help create the community. There are people overseas that want to come here. They just don't yet have the means, and they're trying to save up and figure out how to do it. And there are active, you know, people that are actively searching for property around here. They're now starting to look like, you know, they emailed me, we sort of became friends, they came to visit, and over time they're really working hard to actually become part of this sedevacantist community that I've literally started on my own. You can do the same, and this is going to happen. And, you know, say, oh, well, what if I'm not a sedevacantist? There's going to be all sorts of experiments bubbling up. There's going to be like, oh, well, we've got a Baptist community here, and we've got like a little atheist enclave here, and then you're going to have the, whatever, LGBTQ quarter in some city, and, you know, and you'll soon see what works and what doesn't. The thing about Catholicism, it's got 2,000 years of unbroken history of success. Does that mean there wasn't, you know, setbacks? Does that mean there weren't corrupt popes, priests, bishops? Does that mean there weren't bad guys? No, of course, humans. So, you know, humans are scum, basically. So you're going to have problems. But overall, the Catholic Church is the longest, most resilient organization or empire, call it what you want, in the entire history of the human race that we know of. And yes, it has been greatly reduced since 1958, but we're still around, we still exist, we're still visible. You know, you've got the internet. If you can't find out what sedevacantism is by, you know, going in the internet, reading up on it, and, you know, just buy the Code of Canon Law and read that, or buy one of my books and read those. You know, it's easy for us to now see and know what's going on. So We're still there, and there is a long, long history of success in this. And even these times that we're going through, there's nothing new there. In about the year 400 or so, things were so bad, and there was so much like violence, theft, murder, rape, whatever, going on all over the place, that what's the famous, Saint Benedictine, what was that? That was a guy that said, look, everything is just going to shit, so I'm just going to go up on a mountain and start a little monastery, and I'm just going to seclude myself from the rest of the world, and that's it. I'll just start being a monk up there. And then other monks came and they started to build monasteries, and then he said, like, hey, this is working out. So they built more monasteries, and then there was more monks doing this, and the monasteries started to become self-sufficient and making money and producing extra stuff, because hey, you've now got a bunch of devout Catholics that all they do is pray and work, and they're all men. So how long do you think that's going to take before it's successful? Weeks. I mean, keep in mind that the Knights of Malta built 2 huge stone castles to defend Malta because they knew they were going to be invaded by the Muslims. They did 2 of them in 6 months. So, when men actually get organized and they start to do stuff, you can't stop them. They're going to be very, very powerful. So, no, chances mine weren't laying for months. Then they all decided to lay 1 egg yesterday. Okay, well, maybe change their feed. Slantish of Ebe says, the egg whites are thin and watery. The yolk is black and rotten smelling. Again, see what happens if you feed your chickens organic stuff, like proper, go out and catch some bugs, actual live bugs, and give them that. Go and buy some worms or something, or, you can let a few things rot, flies will come and they will make maggots, and chickens will eat maggots, so be a little bit creative and see what happens. Willie Ram says, Catholicism is so resilient, even its memory and echo gives life. Yes, and the reason it's so resilient is because it is supernaturally protected. No human organization, no empire has lasted as long as the Catholic Church. Why do you think that is? Because Jesus said, I will be with you till the end, till end times. And we may well be entering end times, which is why the church has shrunk. And again, if you read your Bible, it tells you, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, it's broad and wide. The road to salvation is thin and narrow and hard. What do you think's happening now? Oh, you sedevacantants, it's just a few of you guys and you're all crazy. Oh, really? We're the only guys that think logically, and hey, we're here for a reason. Hello, Cordo. S.H. Kenny says, the many enclaves sounds right. It's happened already in the various little Italy's, Chinatown, etc. Yes, but I'm talking about something quite more specific. And again, if you go and read my blog posts, there is a 4-part series of blog posts on my blog. You just go onto the search me thing and say part 1, part 2, and you'll find the posts. Where I describe it's what I'm talking about is a lot more organized than loosely sort of, oh yeah, we're all Polish, we're all hanging on the Polish quarter. No, I'm talking about people that consciously choose to have the same religious beliefs, the same ideologies, and the same generic approach to how they're gonna secure the future for their children. And these communities will start out small, but in a very quick period of time, and we know this from historical fact. We know this if you read Rodney Stark, you'll know this if you read his book, How the West Won, that the fastest way to make a religion or an ideology spread is for people to convert friends and family. The real zealots, the people that really have the faith and believe it and live it, and therefore show it works to their friends and family, and then their friends and family says, hey, this stuff is working, maybe the guy's got a point, they join, they become part of it, and so on, and it grows very organically, very quickly. In dark times as we have now, that happens even faster, because although the number of people that are actually sort of awake to what's really going on might be relatively small, and I would look at the injection rates in any country to get an idea of that, and keep in mind Professor Cipolla's 5 laws of human stupidity, which law number 1 says there are always more idiots around you than you can ever possibly imagine, and we've now seen that's true. But keeping those things in mind, although the number of people that actually wake up to what's really going on might be small, they find each other quicker because it's smaller, So those communities are going to form faster, and they will be strong, and they will be homogeneous in ideology, and probably also in generic ethnicity, culture, and so on. And so what will that happen? What will that make happen? That will mean that you will get actual little tiny hamlets at first of people that all think the same way, of people that want to protect their way of life. In Italy, we're now starting to see going up in certain shops like posters that are saying, we don't believe insects are a food source, nor GMOs, and we're going to keep all that crap out of our shops. We have a tradition as Italians of eating real food, and that's the only thing that's going to come through those doors. So people are starting to push back. And it doesn't matter what the government says or tries to force you to do and whatever. The government in Italy tried to give fines to people that hadn't taken the serum shots that are over 50. And then they sent out a bunch of them. Then they said, oh no, well, we'll delay them. When the government changes, then the government changed. And they said, right, send out some more. So they sent out some more, and it's like, yeah, you guys you're just going to have to pay these fines. And everybody that's over 50 basically said, fuck you, we're not paying it. So when the government realized, oh shit, this is not going our way, and on social media, it's everywhere. People are just saying, nah, fuck them. I'm not going to pay it. Then they just like, oh, okay, guys, we'll just do away with that. Because that's what happens. If the whole population just goes, nah, fuck you, we're not doing that, they'll stop. Now, the thing about having a little city-state of whatever zealots, whether you're Amish or specific, they've got a problem. The Amish have got a problem because they're going to be allowed to do whatever they want as long as they won't allow them to do whatever they want. Because the moment that they decide, no, the Amish are, well, we're going to take them out. The Amish are pacifists with no weapons. So what are they going to do? Once they send like, I don't know, a bunch of stormtroopers from FEMA or whatever to put them all in camps because they've got raw milk, or whatever, whatever crazy thing they'll come up with. What are they going to do? Nothing. Now, if you've got a little enclave of Appalachian rednecks sitting, I don't know, in buttfuck nowhere, and there's only like 35 of them, but they're all armed to the teeth, they live in the mountains, they know the area. First of all, they're going to be one of the last places that they send a battalion of FEMA agents or whatever, right? Unless something really weird happens. But let's say they do, let's say they do send a battalion of FEMA agents there. How many FEMA agents they're going to send? Like Waco, right? They're going to send what, like a couple of hundred guys? Well, if you're a FEMA agent and you've got a couple of hundred guys and they've got like, Humvees and whatever, half tracks and small tanks, but you're now having to deal with 35 hardcore rednecks that are armed to the teeth and are willing to die to protect their way of life and their kids and whatever. You think you're going to lose some guys? Oh yeah, you will. And that's if you just spring it on them. Because if they find out that you're coming, or if they can prepare for it, 35 guys that are working to protect their family, they are a formidable enemy, especially if they've got the equipment to give you some trouble. And especially if they're in a geographic location that helps them protect their family and their way of life. So they're going to do what tyrants everywhere. They're going to, well, let's leave those guys for last. Let's conquer the whole country first and make sure we've crushed everybody. And then maybe when we can afford to send a whole army there, but in the meantime, these little enclaves keep growing, and they'll keep growing faster. And the more people get persecuted, the faster they'll keep growing. So that's the stuff I've been thinking about, because ideally, when my kids are in their 20s or 30s or whatever, I want them to be able to run around. My ideal world would be a very civilized, a very educated one, where you learn about the classics, you learn about the history of your people, and, you're free to own whatever weapons you want, pretty much. the people that are, mentally incapable or emotionally incapable or dangerous to have weapons, we know who they are. In a small community, you'll know, oh, that guy is a bit crazy. That guy is he's a bad apple. No. We, the Council of Elders, in our little village of 150 people, because that's how we're going to keep villages, 150 people, and every 150 people, there's going to be the elders of that village, and that's it. No one else is going to tell them how to live, because it's now a city-state, right? And there's going to be like, what, maybe 5, 10 elders. They're going to say, Bob, nah, Bob's crazy, violent, beats his wife, a drunk, does drugs. Nah, Bob shouldn't even be in this village. In fact, we should kick Bob out. Never mind let him have a gun. No, fuck that. Bob's not having a gun. And that's how it'll be done. And it will be done that way eventually. When shit hits the fan, guess what? People revert to laws and rules that are the same across culture, populations, very, very similar. Whether you take the Bushmen of the Kalahari, the Kazaki reindeer drivers of the steppes, a bunch of like Russian peasants in Siberia, a bunch of farmers in rural Brazil or snowy Canada, and you put like 50 people together or 200 people together, and now they have to form a set of rules and laws and regulations and what you can and what you can't do. Guess what? They all come up with the same shit. Don't steal. Don't try and rape my kids or my wife. Don't lie. And if you do, you get punished. And for certain punishments, they will never find your body ever again. And so it should be. I've got no problem living like that. Like when I was in South Africa, pretty much everyone was armed. Guess what? You didn't get bank robberies. You had all sorts of other problems. The problems that you had in South Africa, because, generally low IQ people with not a lot of brains functioning, you'd get like a shootout at every road rage incident would end up being a firefight, so that's not cool. But guess what? If you give in a given area, let's say you have a country of 1 million people, whatever, right, with a wall around it, right? You can't have the people are the people, and you give every one of those million people, men, women, and children above the age of 6, you give them live loaded firearms. Is there going to be mayhem for a little bit? Yeah. And then guess what? Before you lose 10% of the population, everybody, men, women, and children above the age of 6, every single one of them will know exactly how a gun works, how to treat it, how to be respectful of it, and who should and who shouldn't have it. And they will all be in agreement about it. And it will be a very polite society. Very polite and very efficient. And people will learn to control their emotions, and if they have road rage, they'll go like, ah! And the guy that made the mistake, instead of going, you fucking idiot, I'm in a rush, he'll go like, I'm so sorry, I was wrong. And the guy that got cut off will be like, yeah, you were, buddy, but it's okay, maybe you're in a rush. And that'll be how people behave. And I saw that happen in South Africa over a number of years. Why? Because the alternative is throw and fire, and you better be quicker than the other guy. And guess what? No one really wants to live like that. So it works. Let me just catch up with the chat here. Oh, sorry, there's a few. Oh yeah, Woolly Ram says, I've never been saner in my entire life. Exactly. I had the same conclusion after a few years of being a Catholic. I'm like, my God, why didn't anybody tell me about this before? I met all sorts of Christians and fake Christians and churches trying to tell me about the Bible. And I was like, I can destroy your arguments in 5 minutes flat. There's no logic. There's no reason. I can prove that what you're saying is nonsense. And I don't even have to go to the Bible. I can actually show it to you. I never met a proper Catholic. I never met a proper Christian. The closest I came to was actually a Jehovah's Witness, a family of Jehovah's Witnesses that invited me over to have dinner with them. And the guy was, and Jehovah's Witness, let me be clear, I believe they're a cult and they're really bad. I know people that have come out of it and they're damaged for life. Their parents, it's a hellish situation. But nevertheless, there was some seed of truth in there that made me pick up and read Mere Christianity, the C.S. Lewis, very famous book. But the Mere Christianity, I found it weak and flab. You know, I was like, this guy's so English. He gets really close to the important stuff, and then he talks his way around it and doesn't ever hit the point. And I was like, well, but why did no one introduce me to what's his name? Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton. Now, if I'd read Chesterton when I was in my 20s, I probably would have become a hardcore Catholic then. If you'd read, because Chesterton is logical, makes perfect sense, it's beautiful. The rhetoric and the dialectic merge into a seamless whole that you can't deny is true. You know, that sort of education is very important. You know, now we have to do homeschooling as much as possible, because the stuff that they're trying to teach them in school is just brainwashing technique. I mean, if a kid needs to be able to read well, write well, do maths well, and as much of it and as deep as you can. If you've got those three things, the next and a very important thing is history, actual history, the real history, the truth, finding out what really actually happened. Not what they tell you happened, not what you, oh, well, the teacher said. No. Go and read many sources, go and find out, try and really find out what really happened in the past. From ancient past, the classics like the Iliad, the Odyssey, those kind of books, Greek, Latin, learn these languages, learn these things. They're important. And you won't understand why they're important when you're doing it when you're 15. You'll be like, oh, this is boring shit. But later in life, you will appreciate it more, and it'll be easier for you to pick up again if you've studied it when you were 10 or 15. And you can make it interesting. If you've got a good teacher, any of these things can be made really valuable, really interesting. So that's, let me just catch up. Altoid PA says, Kurgan, do you own a copy of the Catechism of the Catholic Church published in 1994? No, why would I? It's trash. It wasn't published by the Catholic Church, it's published by Freemasons. There is no valid pope, there are no valid priests or bishops in the so-called Bergoglian church. All the Novus Ordo clergy are Satanists, they're fake priests. They at best, if you really want to be charitable, they are incompetent ignorance to the point of being criminally incompetent. And I don't believe that's the case. I believe there are knowing Satanists, knowing Freemasons, knowing deceivers who just want to live the life by not having to do anything except pretend to do a fake mass, which is really satanic. No, the only Catholics are sedevacantists. The only books that you should read about Catholicism is things that must have been printed before 1958. Everything after 1958 is suspect. Certainly everything after 1963/5 when Vatican II ended. But I wouldn't even trust anything from 1960. I would go straight to before 1958. So no, I don't trust any of those publications. Atrocious says, hey, I saw you live on the tube. I love the Gasifier project. You've got great ideas. God bless her. Thank you very much. The Gasifier project is late. I am late with it. I have been making a little bit of progress. I've uploaded on the other channel, the Apocalypse Joe channel, I've uploaded another little video. And hopefully in the coming week, I'll be getting some of the connectors for the pipes. That's taken me a while to do because I spent quite a while trying to find out about brassing. Brassing is a kind of almost like soldering for big parts. And it's a bit complicated. It's not easy to do. You need sort of specialized equipment. And I just thought, the whole point of doing the Gasifier project was to make a gasifier as simple and as easy to build as possible. And brassing, you need to know about metals and which metal you use for which brassing application. And I just thought, there's got to be an easy way to do this, and there is. So I found what that is, and I'll slowly, do it, test it. It's a step-by-step process. I'm sorry it's late. I was ill. Then the weather has been terrible. When I've had good weather recently, I've had 2 days of sunlight, of nice, decent weather. but I spent most of that cutting wood because I needed to make storage for, for the days that it rains or snows or whatever. And we've got little kids and stuff. The house needs to be warm, so priorities. But I will get the gasifier done by hook or by crook. It will be done. Elias said, forming spiritually strong and physically politically capable communities is the only way for survival and success on the breakdown that will eventually come. In every respect, ideologically, spiritually, physically, you need to be able to defend what you build. And you can only really do that in communities. You need other people. It's fine if you're like a single lone wolf semi-monk that lives on a mountain cave, and yeah, fine, you can live out your life like that, but so what? What are you going to change? Are you going to change the world? Are you going to make it better for other people's kids? That's not to say that if you're childless, you don't count. No, not true at all. I mean, priests are childless. Priests and bishops, real priests and bishops are, they make that sacrifice because they literally dedicate their entire life to God and to spreading the gospel and doing the right thing. And there are men or women that maybe biologically, physically can't have children, or they waited too long. They got fooled by the machine long enough that now it's too late. Okay, they can still be very useful. They can still be absolute members of that society and very productive and helpful members of that society. But you still have to be members of that community. So you have to get in there. You have to get involved. That's, what it's about. Slanty Chauvet says, on cricket food, In-N-Out Burger is apparently 3D printing cricket burgers. Lovely. Yeah. You guys can enjoy that if you want. I think I'll rather eat shoe leather from my shoes before I try that shit. Sam Wereb says, I live next to what is probably the largest Amish settlement in the world. They won't even shoot burglars. Don't fool yourself that they will fight anyone. Yeah, I know. I don't remember where I read this or whatever. There was incidents where a guy broke into the house of an Amish guy, raped the guy's wife, and then was offered food and drink by the fucking dad. I'm like, what? It's just, they don't count. They literally are going to have zero impact. If they're lucky, the cyclone that is the current era will blow over them without hitting their little community. And if they're not lucky, it will hit their community and there'll be absolutely nothing left. It'll be fucking matchsticks in, an analogy of what will happen in human form. Hello, Backstabber! So, yeah. Guys, feel free to fire questions, comments, whatever. That's also, it's sort of related to the streams. I did my favorite 5 long guns, my favorite 5 short guns. And what if you can only have 5 weapons for any eventuality, including being teleported to T-Rex times. And skills, that you need to, in the 2 years that I've been here, I have done more physical things. I've always done a lot of physical stuff, but I've done more physical things that I had never even thought of trying before than I did in probably my entire life all put together. I've learned to repatch a roof, do welding, build a piece of a building. I knew things about laying concrete foundations, whatever. I haven't done any huge buildings or anything, but fix up roofing, fix up the tool sheds, and learn to weld, learn how to build a table for the little metal lathe that I got. Learn how to use a metal lathe, and I'm a nobody at it yet, but at least I get the basics now. Take apart, clean up, and put back together a metal lathe, which I've done to a certain extent, but I still need to do the main engine part of it. I want to go through that as well. Uh, I've learned to do prune olive trees and like all the stuff related to the farming, and figure out a whole bunch of stuff and what plants and what mushrooms I can eat. And I'm nowhere near the end of it. I'm nowhere near ever feeling like, yeah, I'm a competent farmer. And I don't think I'll ever be, because partly there's just so much to learn that I should have started this when I was in my teens to like be good at it. I mean, I've got a friend now, a really good friend, who's like, he came to help me like cut down some of the dead trees and stuff and make some firewood. And he's like a little guy. He's like maybe 60 kilos wet, and he's got my big chainsaw, and he's just like, nye, 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 nye. And I said, hey, do you want the goggles and the ear protectors? And just looked at me like, what are you, a fag? Kind of. And he just, with this chainsaw, he's just like, and he made me laugh, and I said to him, hey, you know what? You remind me of me when I went to the gun range, because you go to the gun range to do your gun handling course or whatever, like, because I was never in the military. If you've been in the military, I avoided the military in Italy. It was compulsory, but I was living outside, so I didn't need to do it. So if you've done your military service, you can just present that, and they're like, okay, this guy knows guns because he's been in the army. But if you haven't done that, you have to go and do like a 2-day course on like handguns and fire and long arms or whatever. And when I went to the thing, they really explain it so that like a fucking lobotomized monkey would be able to then shoot a gun safely, And whatever, I just sit through it, you have to do it, whatever. And they take the gun, they give you the gun, they've shown you how to load it, and like, I'm very respectful of the instructors. They're doing their job, so I only do when I'm told, okay, you can load now. When they tell me to load, I started to load up, and then I said, can I shoot? Yeah, okay, I can shoot. And I started to shoot. And the instructor, like, the one instructor just looked at me and goes, yeah, it's not really the first time you've picked up a gun, is it? And he just, like, after that, he just walked away and said, yeah, do what you want. You're fine. And so I was watching my friend with this chainsaw, and he was born in a family of farmers. When he was 8 years old, and he's a little guy, when he was 8 years old, he had to, like, push the what do you call it? The aratro. What is the name of the thing in English? The thing that you use to cut up the earth. Oh man, my English is failing me. You've got oxen that pull this like giant sort of metal thing that splits the earth so that you can plant stuff. Whatever, I forget the name of it now. And when he was 8 years old, he was like driving this thing, and then he gets to the end, and he had to like unhook it and hook it back onto the horse or the oxen, whatever it was. And he was a little 8-year-old. He's been doing that since 8. So he's a little guy, but with this chainsaw, big chainsaw, he's just like, nye, 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 nye. And I looked at him and I goes like, it's not the first time you use a chainsaw, hey? And he just burst out laughing, because he's like, I can use a chainsaw and whatever, yeah, use it now. But you can just see I don't know how to describe it, his confidence with it, his ability to just like use it in different ways quickly, and he'll like cut a bit of grass that's in his way, just like and it's lathe, Marcus, it's a lathe. Metal lathe, mini metal lathe, a Chinese metal lathe. There's a whole series on my other channel, which, tell you what, let me just find it. Let me just find the other channel, and I'll see if I can put the link on here, because I've got 2 YouTube channels. Okay, I just put YouTube there. That will help. Let's see what comes up. If anything. While we is something loading here or not? No, it seems to be stuck. Where's it going? Ah, there we are. Oh, what's just happened here now? This mouse sometimes. Come on. This mouse is weird. Like you just touch it, and sometimes it just flips pages. That's probably me. Like, there we go. Okay, that. And is it this one? Yeah, that's it. Let me just copy that. Okay, in the meantime, what's the deal with the Polish? You said before that they're the N-word of Europe. Haha, thanks. Well, if you want the answer to that, you know, because apparently people get all offended and then it's like, oh, well, you're a nasty man. So then they try and get me banned and stuff. But if you go on BitChute, look for the Kurgan channel on BitChute, and you look at video number 114, I discuss my ideas about all nationalities. And you'll see that I have some choice words to say about pretty much every human being. There you go. That's the link for those of you that are interested in the mini lathe, the gasifier project, and that sort of stuff, and like, you know, building tools and things like that. That's another channel that I specifically just keep for this sort of thing. And it's got a nice little intro video, which I hope you go and look at, because I actually took a little bit of time to do it, and it's quite entertaining. And the tagline of that channel is Apocalypse Quality Engineering with Zombie Horde Precision. And, you know, it's pretty much what it is. So that's, I hope if you're into the mini lathes and the gasifier project, that sort of stuff there, enjoy. A woolly ram, okay, let me just, Catechism of Trent, Haydock Bible, The Spiritual Combat, My Way of Life, all books that date back before Vatican II, and warmly recommended if you want to taste the real Catholicism has to offer. Yeah. If you're in the US, you can buy them from a sede vacante organization. Outside, you will have to use Amazon, sadly. Yeah, you know, if you, not necessarily, if you go to sodalitium.biz, which is the website of the group of priests and whatever that I was baptized with, they have books there, and I think they ship as well, so you can just buy them direct there, support them a bit. Plow, thank you, Woolly Ram. That's what my little friend, you know, my friend, when he was like 8 years old, he had to use a plow with the oxen and stuff, you know, the old way. Have you found any evidence of elite satanic predilections in Buddhism? Buddhism is complicated because you have to understand the origin of Gautama, Siddhartha, Buddha. He was a Hindu prince. Buddha was a Hindu prince who left all his like worldly things and, you know, went roaming the land basically. So there are traces of Hinduism in Buddhism. Hinduism, you can think of it as a religion, but really Hinduism is sort of, you know, that game they call Chinese telephone, where you whisper into like somebody's ear something, and then you go through the whole class and everybody whispers into the next person, and by the time you get to the last guy, the message has become so garbled it doesn't have any resemblance to the original message. And that's what Hinduism is, with very ancient historical things. So like in Sanskrit, in their, you know, ancient writings, they describe nuclear war, they describe flying machines and all sorts. And then you end up with like a god that's got like an elephant head, and you're like, well, what's that about? Well, because they apparently could do like head transplants on animals and different things, you know. So there was a weird advanced technology that was there like 30,000 years ago or something. And there is very good evidence that the war nuclear weapons exploded in various areas of India, which have got the highest radioactive count, similar to what you'll have in, you know, Hiroshima and Nagasaki sort of thing. But they happened a long time before that. So to a certain extent, the Hindu mythology is also garbled history. And I believe that they worship very different, you know, spirits and so on. So it's a bit like animistic, and at the same time, they may well be worshipping things like fairies, you know, things like that, or things that are maybe demonic or maybe on an alternate path that are neither good nor bad, but not necessarily our friends. So it's quite complicated. And keep in mind that Buddha came from there. The principal theme of Hinduism and Buddhism is reincarnation, which I believe is probably a thing. As a Catholic, I'm told not to like delve into that stuff, which is fine, because I'd come to my own conclusion, you know, long before I was anywhere near Catholicism. I came to my own conclusion that yes, reincarnation is real, but for the vast, huge majority of people, you don't need to know who you were in a past life, and it won't do you any good trying to figure it out, and it will divert you from what you need to be doing in this life if you try to spend too much time trying to, you know, figure that crap out. There are some, you know, unique exceptions, just like there are unique exceptions in Catholicism that tell you, you know, like whatever, oh, well, you don't want a woman to be the leader of an army. No, that's wrong, right? And yet Joan of Arc, and she's a saint. So there are always, Catholicism has always got the odd exception, but the odd exception has to fulfill certain criteria and be correct in many respects. And even then, that's not the rule, dude. Okay? Is there a time when it's really the best thing to do for you to run a red light? Yeah, sure. But has that become now the loophole for every idiot to say, hey, that guy did it, you know, when his wife was pregnant and he had a house on fire and he was trying to get home real quick? So I can do it because, hey, I'm late for work. You know, no. And people are stupid. They're beasts. Without rules, they'll eat each other in the street. So you need to stick to the rules. And I absolutely agree with that. I'm fully on board with the magisterium of the Catholic Church. Are there exceptions? Yeah, there can be, if they fit all that particular criteria. And a priest will tell you that too, when and if the priest reckons that you are wise enough or intelligent enough or good enough to understand the difference between, look, under these specific circumstances, there is that exception for this specific condition, and only in those specific circumstances. You understand? And then you say, yes, Father, thank you very much for having educated me because I'm curious. You know, not as in, oh, great, now I can bend the rules. That's not how it works. So, you know, the point is, you need to grasp how things are meant. And now I forget why I started talking about, oh, Buddhism. Right, so in Buddhism, reincarnation is the main theme. And then there's different types of Buddhism. There's like some pretty cultish versions of Buddhism. There's the so-called Western Buddhism, which are usually grifters. And I met one of these. That was such a funny story I'm going to tell you guys because I found it hilarious. Keep in mind, this was in South Africa probably 20-something years ago, if not 30. I was training obsessively, like I was, you know, training 6 days a week, and I had like my knuckles were always skinned because I was doing the makiwara, and you know, I was like pretty obsessed. I was working as a armed close protection guy and doing security work and writing. You know, I was just kind of really intense guy, and because of the karate, I was essentially a Zen agnostic. You know, Zen philosophy is essentially the Japanese version of Taoism, so they perfected it, and Buddhism is, you know, something that went from India all the way to China. And again, the Shintoist beliefs of the Japanese are essentially Buddhists' beliefs that have been refined. So I was all into the whole, you know, Budo, you know, the way of war and karate and honor and all that stuff. I was like pretty fanatical about it. But I've always been curious. So, you know, I would go and watch what are these guys? Oh, what are they? They're Dianetics. Oh, okay. Scientologists. Oh, that's a lot of bullshit. All right, but let's just go and fuck with their brain a little bit and see what happens. I've done that throughout my life. I'll go to all these like weird seminars and meetings. Oh, well, what are you guys? Pickup artists. All right, let me go and check you out and just fuck with you, just to see. Give them, I'm Venetian. It's what we do. It's our entertainment. We poke people just to see how they react. So I went to this like very famous Buddhist guy who was like in South Africa was the thing of the moment. He'd written a couple of books and he was doing seminars and all these fucking woo-woo, crystal, not crystal meth, but maybe some of them weedy, like new age people were like, oh yeah, oh Rob or Bob or whatever his name was. I think it was Rob something. Oh, he's a real Buddhist, And so I went to the seminar and he's like sitting up on a stage, feeling very humble, humble brag. And then like he's sitting there and he's giving his talk and he's basically saying, see, I was always this kind of person that I always wanted to meet somebody that could tell me more about me than I could tell about myself. And I was just like, well, you're a fucking idiot then, And I just thought, watching the guy, and I clocked him, I clocked him within minutes. Because why? Because I was busting my ass 6 days a week, getting punched in the face regularly and punching people in the face and getting injury and fighting with the injury and going through it and, reading up all sorts of books and very intense guy. If you live like that, you can't go in a martial art class where the rules are, if you get knocked out, when you wake up, you carry on, and B, you clean your own blood. Okay? You can't do that for a few years at a time and not learn something about actual humility, learn something about actual truth. Even if it's just that if you don't dodge, it's gonna hit you in the face, So I clocked this guy, I was like, he's just a fucking grifter. So I just waited until the Q&A thing, and then I thought, all right, my turn. And I was dressed in a pretty, I think I had a leather jacket on and jeans, and it was the days of mobile phones had just come out, so I had like the latest sort of flip phone of Ericsson or whatever, and I was like, I just thought, okay, when he's starting asking the Q&A, I'll just like pretend to like not be paying attention at all, open my phone, flick it open, flick it closed, just be moving around in a crowd that was like maybe 60, 70 people, it wasn't that big. So I was like, oh, what's the fuck, that guy's not even, paying attention. I was just like, pretend to be like some dumb yuppie, So I'm doing that, and I flick the phone off, and then I just like, kind of put my hand up, like, yeah, you, oh, me, yeah. Yeah, so listen, I just wanted to ask you, so you said you spent 4 years in a cave meditating? I mean, man, that sounds like a huge waste of time to me. I don't know, what were you doing there? Like really sort of, and you should have seen his reaction. Man, I wish I had it on film, because he was just like, he was all like, yes, the wisdom of Buddhism. Oh yeah, you've asked me a question. I smile, nice. Oh yeah, yeah. I asked him that, and he was like, a waste of my time, what? Oh, yeah, well, okay, you can think it was a waste of time if you think so, Next. It's just like, bang, mask fell. And I've done that to a number of people on stage while they were like brainwashing masses. I've done it. The biggest one I've done it to was to a guy, one of the followers or whatever, the guru of Amma, the hugging saint, this Hindu woman that has since been caught out with like fucking prostitution and all, nasty shit going on. But it was in a hall of like 3,000 people. And I managed to like get the attention of the guy that's on stage and made the 3,000 people laugh at him, basically. And that there are ways to do this. By then I'd trained in hypnosis and whatever, but I had a certain skill in this, a talent, even before I learned hypnosis. But there are ways you can hypnotize the guy that's on stage if you know what you're doing and you're in the crowd. And you can get him to notice you regardless of whether he wants to or not. So I did a little bit of that. But that was just because these guys were like, they deserve to be taken down a peg. So getting back to Buddhism, there are versions of Buddhism that are quite cultish, almost like you could say Jehovah's Witnesses compared to Catholicism. And they can be pretty, weird, controlling. I don't know. I haven't delved into it as deeply. Overall, I think Buddhism is a much healthier religion than Churchianity, I think, in many cases. Or at least a lot of Churchianity, especially the very Protestant, freaky, we got like transgender bishops now and whatever. It's certainly a lot healthier than Islam, I think. Certainly a lot healthier than Judaism, I think. So overall, as far as world religions go, Buddhism is like my second favorite, let's say. Generic Taoism or Zen philosophy or Shintoism, they're pretty harmless. It's do good. Basically, their whole thing is like, be the best version of yourself that you can be. So I don't really see too much of a problem with it. I'm sure there are, you know, like in anything, there are humans in it, so there's going to be some bad shit that's in some way. Backstabber says, by the way, which country do you think has the biggest amount of grifters? I only know American ones, but I've never been around the world as much as you, so I might be wrong. My personal impression, and again, this might get me, you know, a lot of people upset. If we're looking at what I would call the Western world, which is, you know, North America, Europe, including Russia, Australia, New Zealand. So let's say the Caucasian world. I'd say that in America, USA, certainly a lot of grifters, but also a lot of ignorant and genuinely stupidly innocent people, I think. So, and yes, there's a lot of grifters, especially in the Protestant fake pastor thing. But if I had to pick, you know, and okay, depending on how you see it, you know, with Albania counting, places like Romania, Albania, I think they've got a lot of corruption and a lot of, you know, bad shit going on. And probably things like, I don't know, maybe Estonia. I don't know anything about Estonia. Generally, I think the northern, you know, Sweden, Norway, England, I'm sure they have corruption there too, but it's of a different sort of nature. Personally, I think Australians, and to a certain extent New Zealanders, are actually probably the worst. I've never actually been to Australia, and I have no intention of going there. And I think it's a cultural thing because, you know, Australians are essentially the descendants of undesirables that were shipped out of the United Kingdom. They were literally like, you know, people that belonged in jail, and they got like exiled to Australia. So their descendants are that. They're from people like that. And those present themselves as very honest, forthright, direct, and, oh, I'm a man's man. And in reality, you know, with obviously there's always the exception that confirms the rule, as they say, but I found them to be absolutely backstabby, unreliable people as a group. You know, obviously it's a generalization. I'm sure there are some very nice Australians. I just haven't met them. I've met one. But, you know, and yeah, so that would be my take on it. But then that's just looking at one aspect of the population, because then if you look at Africa and generically Africans, you know, I would say that Africans in general have a relatively simpler version of grifting, much more direct, much more in the moment, and they also have, I think, comparatively a lot more people that are honest to a degree that it's difficult to comprehend. They might not be geniuses, but they are extremely honest. There are extremely honest Africans that I've met, that I've worked with, that I take my hat off to them, because in their conditions there's no way I'd be as nice and honest a person as they are. And the grift is quicker, simpler, and more survival mechanism. But, and obviously Africa is huge. I haven't been all over Africa, but and again, I wouldn't consider your average Egyptian to be, you know, sort of north of the Sahara. They're sort of a bit more of a mixed Islamic type of people. South of the Sahara, they're more proper, you know, darker skinned Africans. And in the places of Africa that I have traveled, which essentially are South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, and so on, and we've had interactions with certainly enough people from, you know, Zimbabwe, Kenya, and so on. Nigeria, I was also lived in Nigeria for a while. I found the people that are most grift-like are the Xhosa. The Xhosa are a tribe of Africans that is predominantly found in Botswana, and they tend to be, as a group, generally a bit lazier and a bit shiftier and a bit more underhanded than, say, the Zulu or the Tsonga or, you know, many other different tribes. So that's my take on that. In South America, I think pretty much all of the South Americans are somewhat unreliable in one degree or the other. But again, there are probably, I would say, exceptions in in specific cases. In other words, you might get a Brazilian that was absolutely unreliable on just about everything, but he's really super reliable on, you know, coming to your place at 3 in the morning if you've just like killed somebody or you're in deep shit, you know. They might be absolutely unreliable for turning up on time. They might be absolutely unreliable for like not stealing. They will steal and cheat and lie. But then they might be super reliable on some odd thing that's just like, no, because my grandmother used to do that, and you know, I'm going to make sure that anybody that walks through my door is fed. You know, it's just like a bit weird. So what have I covered now? I've covered the Americas, Africa, Europe, Asia. Again, oh, the absolute worst I would say are the Indians, and I include Pakistan in that. As on the world, I would say they probably take the cake. You know, China I've visited very briefly. I found the Kazakh people to be quite honest and quite forthright, and I got along with them pretty well. Russians, you get all sorts, but I think in Russia it's quite easy to figure out who's going to try and screw you over. At least for me it is. Maybe it's not for most people, but I quite like Russians. I get on with them. You know, China, I don't know. It's too big a place for me to have an idea of China. I can only speak on the Chinese people that I met, and they seem to be very... money seems to be their god more than anything else, and success and power and that sort of thing. So on that basis, they can be quite manipulative or a little bit shifty or whatever, or you know, not straight dealers necessarily. And it might also be a cultural thing. You need to understand how to like deal with them, sort of thing. But I found Indians to be the absolute worst for being honest and direct. They just, I don't think they can do it. So yeah, I would suggest those. The Japanese I get on with great. I don't have a problem. I don't think the Japanese really know how. I think they're almost a nation of autists. I don't think they're really capable of being intentionally deceitful. Maybe they can be in a long-term basis in a very subtle way, but as far as we barbaric white people are concerned, they're essentially, I think, more honorable than most Caucasians, I would suggest. And then there's the whole sort of, you know, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, those kind of areas. Iffy. Again, you can get guys there that are super reliable, and you can get, there's a lot of corruption, prostitution, and other stuff. So, you know, that tend to lend itself to not the ideal situations. You know, Italy in a way is a microcosm of the world, because in Italy you get rare now, a lot rarer than when I was a little kid, but you get the Italian that is like, he is willing to die next to you. You know, he's like fully sold out on the idea of honor, your name, your word meaning something, unto death and so on. There are Italians like that. But generally speaking, they're kind of messy, somewhat unreliable. You can't really fucking rely on them when they tell you that they're going to do something by a set date. They won't, and they'll fucking be late. And the further south you go, and the bigger this problem becomes. And that's just a reality, you know. It's not like, oh, but you're racist, oh, but you hate. I just notice patterns. I notice everybody that has a brain notices things. So unless you're brain dead, you will notice certain patterns, and that's all I'm talking about here. So, you know, then you'll have patterns that you're more familiar with, that you're more comfortable with, and patterns that you're not familiar with and you don't like at all. Willie Ram says the church has a history of dragging cave-dwelling saints to do public work, often in spite of said saints' desire. Yeah, like the Pope that was called Celestino, Pope Celestine I. The guy just wanted to be left alone in the mountains. They kept pulling him down. Said, no, you're going to be Pope. And he's like, fuck off. And he ran away a couple of times to just want to go back to being a hermit. And they wouldn't let him. So, yeah. Okay, well, I've been going for over an hour, so if you've got any questions, shoot them now. I'll just briefly mention, in fact, I tell you what, I'm going to send you the link of it because I've archived it. It's an interesting little, I was surprised to find out that even some friends of mine didn't know about this. Alternative 3. The guy who wrote Alternative 3, and then after he wrote this fiction book, he realized he must have hit a bit close to the mark, because he started to get some very interesting communications, let's say, from members of the deep state. So I've just put a little link there for if you want to read up about Alternative 3. Okay, 12 apostles here and 13 thumbs up. I reckon I've had a good balance of light and dark. Thank you all for being here. I have been a lot more active on the blog. I try to post a blog post, at least, try once a day. I don't always hit it, but and I try to make it like a relevant blog post, something that's worth reading, not just like, oh, guess what? The Russians launched another missile and the Ukrainians blew up again. Try and make it somewhat meaningful. So, if you haven't been permanently banned for making a stupid comment on the blog and there is a topic you want me to cover, just, leave a comment or drop me a line or an email or whatever. And that's basically it for tonight. I'm kind of hungry because I haven't eaten yet, although it's quite late. So I'm going to go make myself a nice pasta. Good morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you are. And God keep you and yours indeed. Same to you.